What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Total Human Optimization Podcast. We're here with Jill Coleman, fitness blogger, life coach, fitness coach, a variety of many awesome things to help you out, particularly to help women. On her URL, jillfit.com. It's a pleasure to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to digging into some of the mindset stuff because
Yeah,
that's an area where we really have a lot of crossover. And of course, if the mind's not on board, you're going to have a hell of a time getting the body on board.
absolutely. I'm so honored to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So I noticed on there you have is it a 10 week? It's a 12 week mindset based course where you're just really focusing on getting people's mind right. And so I wanted to just take that as a starting point and see the process in general that you like to take people through.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for asking that. For a long time, I was in the physique world. So I was doing a lot of fitness competitions, fitness modeling, things like that. And it was great, except that everything that was around what do you eat? How do you exercise? What's the best thing to do? And what was happening was I was noticing for myself and a lot of my clients, they knew what to do, but they just couldn't implement it on the regular. And so that's when I was like, there has to be some sort of missing piece here. And that's, of course, there's so much research on like willpower and decision making and things like that. So I started kind of exploring a lot of the psychology of that and why people do what they do and how they're motivated to stay exercising and how they're motivated to eat well and things like that. And there's so much more there than just the what to do's. It's about how do you do it and how do you consistently do it. So the 10-week mindset makeover is one of my flagship courses at jillfit.com. And essentially it takes women through 5 different modules based on helping them implement better and also not beating themselves up along the way. So it's a fat loss course with the goal of, functionality, living longer, feeling good, looking good. But at the end of 10 weeks, feeling as though it's not miserable to be on this journey. Really, it's about, can I do this for good? And do I actually enjoy it? Because if you don't enjoy it, you and I know you're not going to end up doing it. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, beating yourself up, that's like nobody beats ourselves up better than we beat ourselves up. And I
It's
think
so funny. We think it has utility too, right? Like we think it
yeah.
has like guilt. If we don't have the guilt, we think, wow, we're really going to go off course. And that's just not what the research shows.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a quote that I enjoyed from Don Miguel Ruiz, and he says that you will only accept from other people something that is a less degree to what you do to yourself. So
Right.
like as soon as somebody goes overboard of what you would actually, the shit that you would talk to yourself, you're like, no, I'm not going to take that. But
I
if
know.
they can bring it right up to that line, because we're brutal to ourselves. I mean, all the time we're like, oh, you're lazy, and it's this defeating thing that just lowers us, and is incredibly demotivating instead of the opposite, which is, what we want is to be motivating. But whether it's yourself or whether it's you're a coach of a team or whether you're coaching somebody else, that constant negative reinforcement is going to only lead to negative results.
Yeah, it's really interesting what I've seen a lot with women, especially in the fat loss space or, body change space, is that they tend towards the all or nothing mentality. They tend to think if they can't be perfect on their meal plan or they can't be perfect with their exercise program, then they might as well go way off. And then it turns into this, back and forth kind of all or nothing. Monday morning, I'm going to start fresh again. I'm going to have egg whites and asparagus and, just like this gross food. I'm like, I have like a personal like revulsion against Tupperwares after doing it for such a long time. I mean, it's fine and food prep is great. But a lot of women fall into this trap where if they're not perfect, then they might as well be way off. And that keeps them struggling for weeks, months, even years. And so they come to me and they're like, they don't even know how to eat moderately. They don't even know how to take a bite of something and not polish it off. So it's a lot of the psychology around eating too and how you interact with your food.
Yeah. I mean, that's a funny mentality. It's that mentality. Whereas if you're a little bit off, you might as well just screw it, whether people aren't taking a long-term cumulative, look where every little cumulative step either helps or hurts.
Oh my gosh, it's so
This
hard.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moderation is just not sexy, right? Like moderation is just not like exciting. They've actually shown in research that people would rather be looking for a plan. They're actually more excited to start the plan than they are to actually do it. So that's why especially now it's December, people are getting ready. They're getting their meal plans ready for January. They're super excited to start. But once it gets going, they're 2, 3, 4 weeks in. That's when it starts to fade. That's when they start to be like, well, I don't know if this is working. Let me go find something else. Like humans are so weird. We'll find something that works and then we'll immediately start looking for something else that might work. So strange.
What do you think? So what do you do when someone has that kind of mentality, that start fresh Monday, that, I just look for another diet plan? And I think that's one of the reasons why a billion diet books can all be successful at the same time, is because somebody's always looking for the new thing, when really it's an internal challenge. It's that internal willpower that needs to shift. So how do you help coach people through when they have those sticking points?
Yeah, such a great question. Thanks for asking it. It's I think it's one of those things where, here's the thing, any diet will work for a time, won't it? I mean, if you do any diet for a specific amount of time, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, especially in the competitor world, we would do these diets for 12 weeks, lose 20 pounds only to gain back 30 after the show is over. So I like to say that the faster it comes back off, the faster it comes off, the faster it goes back on. So it's about teaching people that slow and steady is actually going to be what's going to, like, I always say, what's a year? Like, if it takes a year to lose 20 pounds, a year in the grand scheme of the 10, 20, 15 years that most have been struggling is like kind of nothing. But you have to slow your roll. Like, you have to be okay with like the up and down of the journey. Fat loss, body change, it's not linear, it's not predictable. Anyone who's an athlete or into fitness knows that you have times where you're really seeing results and times where things stall, and that's just the nature of the journey. So it's just wrapping your mind around the fact that that's the process and being okay with that, and not needing those linear, predictable, it's hard, because that's like what we want to see when we want to stay motivated with those. We want to see, oh, I lost 20 pounds, oh, I lost 30 pounds, oh, I lost. It's just not how it works, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, and you said, any diet may work. Well, it depends on your definition of work. I mean, some of these diets may have some immediate superficial effect, but at what cost and at what sustainability, and really most of the programs that are sustainable and that are really going to last do take some time, and it's not just about weight loss either. I mean, back when I was my younger self, I'm recovering from sinus surgery right now. And of course, I lost 10 pounds and my performance in the gym has gone way down. I would have tried to get it back in 1 week. I would have tried to kill myself. I would have gotten sicker. I would have gotten more injured. That's just my old self. And then my wiser self, now that I'm 34, is like, okay, take 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it takes to get back, wake your body up slow. And it's going to end up yielding a better result. But it just takes like a lot of experience to learn that, because you want those instant results. Whether you're an athlete and you get off course and you want it back right away, then you're risking injury. Or whether it's, you want to lose weight, you want to see it happen in a week or 2 weeks and get that gratification. But it's just not how things work.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad you brought up age, and not to generalize, but I have certainly found when I started competing and I was in my early 20s too, and it's like you just will do whatever it takes. Someone will say, eat tilapia and broccoli 5 times a day, and you will do that because you're so terrified of like getting up on stage in a bikini and like you need to lose 30 pounds. So you'll do whatever it takes. And I think as you get older, you just go, you know what? I know that there's, like you said, experience. There's no way you would ever be able to do that for the rest of your life. So one of the things I ask my women is, can you see yourself eating this way forever? And if that's a no, then you're on a crash diet. There's something about that you have to kind of, and that's what I love actually about Onnit stuff, is that I feel like the food products at Onnit definitely are conducive to like a lifestyle that's delicious. Like on some level, you have to enjoy your food, right? Like on some level, you have to actually enjoy what you're eating. Otherwise, you're not going to be eating it for long.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Obviously, that's why I'm having this delicious shake that I'm having right now. So you have 5 steps, overarching steps in this 10-week program that you have. What are the basic 5 mindset steps?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'll just be super honest. I don't trick people, but we talk a lot about food and nutrition in the course. But as well as I do that so much of your success has to do with how you interact with other people, how your relationships at home are, how you perceive the world, right? So we have this thing at JillFit that we call the VC, or the victim culture, or like victim mindset. So there's kind of 2 ways we can see that life happens to you or that life happens for you. So not to get into like the super woo woo, but a lot of this stuff does come down to, like you mentioned the 4 agreements. Like we actually talk about that a little bit in the course. We talk about Byron Katie's work. We talk a lot about owning the process and not blaming and complaining. And so while we do talk about things like guilt and shame and remorse and all or nothing dieting, a lot of it comes down to not being a victim of your circumstances, how you can take action, how you can own and show up in your relationships in a more full way, a more ownership type way. I call it radical responsibility. So that if you have people in your life who you feel like are sabotaging you or that don't support you, that it's not really even about them. Like you get a choice to to do something or not. It doesn't matter that so-and-so doesn't support you or your family doesn't get it, or just like all these kind of things. So when I say mindset, it really is all about kind of how you interact with your world and what you think is possible.
Yeah, I've found that people, society and marketers, they tend to pander to people's desire for them to have a lack of free will and then to have no responsibility. So there's always some condition or some reason why things are that way. And then there's a product that can fix that reason, and people like that because you shrug responsibility, because in responsibility, that's where the fear comes. The fear comes that if it's all up to you, then maybe you'll fail. Maybe it is in your control and you'll lay it out there and it won't work. And so it really comes down to that ultimate fear of failure that makes people want to just shrug responsibility. Yeah, it's out of my control. It's bad luck. It was the refs. It was, this condition, that condition. And sure, there's challenges. We all have challenges. But then you look at the history of humanity, the greatest achievers often had the strongest challenges. It takes heat and pressure to form a diamond. It takes the grindstone and the fire to make a sharp sword. We need obstacles. Try lifting weights on the moon with no resistance. You're going to have a hell of a time. You need the resistance. You need to break down the muscles to build them back up. And so all of these obstacles are really our allies. That's the book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, which is an amazing book, talks about Stoic philosophy, and they were onto that really early. Marcus Aurelius. We need all of these challenges. So shifting the mindset to be grateful for the challenges and then saying, all right, bring it. That famous line from the Count of Monte Cristo, you look in the storm and you say, do your worst. Let's go. It's on me here.
Yeah, I know. And I love that so much. And it's so funny that you mentioned The Obstacle is the Way, because I actually do a mentorship for women. It's an 11-month mentorship called Best of You. And I actually have a huge box of his books over here that are ready to go out next week. Nice. So that's so funny. And I totally agree with you. And so much of our success in any realm, whether that's body change, whether that's consistency, whether that's relationships, personal development, just whatever, if you want to try any new big challenge, you have to take ownership. And like you said, I think especially in the weight loss world, around the marketing piece, there is a shirking of ownership that is irresistible to consumers, because I've had plenty of people, women, come to me and say, Jill, just tell me exactly what to eat. I'll just eat whatever you say. And I just know that that's not the case. It's just not going to work. I could tell if I could give them a meal plan right now. There's free meal plans on Google. It's not about what to do. It's about, can you do it? And those who take the most ownership and actually enjoy the process, or find a way to, like you said, look forward to or lean into those struggles, those moments where it's not going well, and you are kind of almost looking forward to them, and knowing that you're stronger, you're more equipped, or you're learning the lessons that you need to learn. It takes a while, and so this message is not sexy, and there's a lot of marketing that is touting the quick fix, all that stuff. So that's why, at Jill Fit, the content and the blog and creating that community of people who just don't like shirking responsibility is really important.
Sure. You talk about another concept, and that's the fake it till you make it concept. Explain, what your views are on that, and how that plays to your advantage.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? As a business owner, you probably kind of understand the power of perception, especially at the beginning, because you actually don't really have any wins yet. So like I said, I work with a lot of women who are just getting started in a new endeavor. I do a lot of business coaching for fitness professionals who are want to build their online platform. And at the beginning, they don't really have any wins under their belt. No one really knows them yet. They don't really have the confidence. I'm sure you've heard of the confidence competency loop. So the more action you take, the more you experience, and the more wins you get, and the more confident you feel, and the more confident you feel, the more action you take. And it's this feed forward cycle. Yeah. So before you get there, you don't have any wins yet. And you're kind of I don't know if am I the person to do that? There's a whole lot, especially at the beginning, a whole lot of second guessing. And so at the beginning, you kind of have to just kind of look in the mirror and be like, well, I'm the shit and no one's going to tell me that. So I just have to assume that, and then act as if you already are that person, because no one's going to tell you're an expert. You have to just assume that and do whatever it takes. Act as if. I'm sure you've heard of the book, The As If Principle. Basically says that, if you want to be a lean person, you have to act as if you are already lean. If you want to be a successful business person, you have to act as if you already have a viable business. It can't just continue to be a hobby if it's something you want to do for the rest of your life. You have to treat it as if it's already making money, even when it's not. And so it's that whole, at the beginning, and eventually you do have to make it, right? So it's fake it till you make it, but also at some point you have to make it.
Yeah, I think belief plays such a key part in that too. I mean, there's plenty of clinical studies showing the power of belief to affect the body, and it's pretty remarkable, how that works. So if you're faking it, but you don't believe it at all, you don't believe that you're going to get there, I'm not sure that that's always going to work. But if you're in, because you're just doing it to really, your belief will grow as you do it. And so it's good to get the momentum going, but having a belief that even if you're not there, that you will get there, and that, that's going to be the key thing, because it plays such a powerful role. I remember there was a study where they divided hotel maids into two groups.
I love a study. I know you're going to say.
Yeah. And so they took one group and they told them that the exercise that they were doing naturally, cleaning the rooms, was enough to meet the Surgeon General's requirement for great exercise. And they were already living a healthy lifestyle. And they didn't tell the other group. And the group they told that to, started losing weight. All of their biometrics improved just because they believed that they were doing the same thing as the other group, but they believed they were doing something good. And so I think that's really important for yourself, just believing that you're going to get there, really envisioning that future, finding your still place, whether that's in meditation, in nature, just getting still, envisioning what that future is that you want, and believing you're going to get there is probably one of the most important things you can do. And then once you cultivate that and use that, exercise that like a muscle, it's going to get stronger and stronger. And as your belief gets stronger, your body's going to change, and the reality is going to manifest in accordance with your belief.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think that's the problem I have with something like the law of attraction and The Secret and all of that stuff. I mean, it's great. I think it's a great starting place for people who are just getting into mindset work, but I think it takes the onus off the action piece. So like you said, belief is important, but at some point you have to take the steps. So you can't just sit around and be like, I wish for a viable business, right? Like you have to actually do the things that someone who already has a business that is successful, so the belief.
But can you believe that you're going to have that without actually taking the steps? I would argue that you can't. Like, you can't believe you're going to beat Mike Tyson unless you've sweat in the ring and taken shots from opponents that are as good as him. You won't believe it.
Affirmation without
not
action
possible.
is delusion. Yeah, I was going to say, affirmation without action is delusion, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's this reinforcing thing. Like, you can't trick yourself. You know yourself, So it's this thing, like, to get genuine belief, you can push the boundaries, but you have to back it up. I'm not going to believe I can run a marathon if I'm not running. I'm not going to believe I can do a triathlon if I haven't swam or rode a bike. You got to take the steps, and then the belief grows.
Exactly.
And then you get an effect like you see with now world champion Conor McGregor. I don't know if you follow the UFC, but for him, belief is this incredibly powerful weapon. He just shatters other people in the belief in himself, and it just propels him to do amazing feats faster and beyond what people expect from his skill set.
Yeah, well, I'm sure, you talk to so many athletes, I'm sure like they all talk about visualization and the power of that. And, I don't really do that too much within my space, but I mean, obviously it's so transformative for performance and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, but just getting out there, I agree. I mean, it's crucial. I mean, practice makes the master. Whatever you practice at, you'll become a master at. If you're practicing procrastination, if you're practicing wait till Monday, you'll become a wait till Monday master. You'll become a wait till the first of the month master. You make these grooves, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. The better you get at justifying your way out of things. The more you shrug responsibility, the more you become a master at shrugging responsibility. And then taking the small steps the other way starts to build the master in the other side, the master of competence, the master of manifestation, of achieving your goals, of making your reality what you want.
Yeah, it's so important, especially at the beginning of any process. If you're trying to do something different or bigger or something you've never tried before, at the beginning, like, you're your worst enemy in a sense, because you're so terrified, you're second guessing, you're wondering what people are going to think of you. You just don't know yet. It's always the hardest. So I tell my girls, in any endeavor, you start a new exercise program, you start a new diet, you start a new business or blog or something like that. At the beginning is always hard. It's literally like rolling a boulder up a hill. You're having to work for every inch. And then I'm sure you can speak to this too. At some point you reach the top, and once you push that boulder over, things actually do start accelerating. Your efforts start exponentiating in a sense. You are, like, at the beginning, you're putting some effort into like this trust piggy bank that you're going to cash in a while down the road, but that takes years,
Yeah.
in some of these big endeavors. So you have to kind of strap on for the long haul. And that comes down to mindset, doesn't it? It comes down to your perception of the process. You can't, like you said, expect instantaneous results. Nothing that has come quickly has ever lasted.
Yeah. What do you do as far as for your coaching piece around, the body image type stuff? Because that to me is one of the really great challenges for all females, because, men have just flat out more criteria under which society judges them. It's just the nature of the game. Men are judged across a variety of ways. So it's easier to score yourself on a lot of different things. And this is not the way it should be. I'm just saying this is the way it tends to be. Women tend to get judged very narrowly. It's very, superficial. How do you look? That's like the primary score for females. And it's this really screwed up situation that's that I think is a major challenge for all females. So do you do any coaching regarding that? Because it's such a nasty trap that society has laid.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. I definitely do, and I know you're going to have Nagar on later this week. I talked to her last night. We went to dinner. She's really doing a lot. I think in the body image space, so can probably speak to that. I did a lot because I came from a competitor background and fitness modeling background, and I remember so vividly having done that for 5 or 6 years, feeling as if the number one way I was contributing to the world was through my looks. If I wasn't lean, if I wasn't a certain weight, if I wasn't getting a cover of a magazine, if I wasn't like, I just had no worth. I felt like fat and like a failure and just all this stuff, even though I was a normal size. So it definitely messed with your head. So I can speak from that place. I know a lot of women have gotten very lean, or they've done shows, or they've been have some success with their looks, and they hang on to it because you start getting affirmation, you start getting attention, people start asking you what you're doing, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a process to find other ways that you can feel like you're contributing outside of your looks. So can you, like for me, it was when I really switched my focus into my business, right? Like writing and communicating, you have to have some level of purpose and meaning outside of your physique. And what, in my experience anyway, whatever you decide it is who kind of shows up. So for example, I don't know if you remember the MySpace days. Like oh yeah. I mean, so that's where I kind of got my start, because you just like literally put up 30 modeling photos of yourself, and you had just like 95% of my fans were guys, right? They're like, hey baby, like, looking good. And like, it was fine. Now, 90% of the audience at Jillfit is women, because the message is different, and and my sense of meaning and purpose is different. You like the attention, but you and I both know that can't be sustainable in the long haul for anyone. And so I think it's a process. And for me, it became, what are other ways I can feel valuable and derive a sense of meaning outside of my body? And it takes, and I'm going to be honest, like, it's still important to me. I still want to, I think it's important to have a little vanity. I still do. You want to look good, feel good, live longer, but you have to find a way that's not the number one. And it's hard. It's a process. And like everything, it's just a choice to start thinking a different way.
Yeah. I think that's a healthy piece of the puzzle. I think we should take care of ourselves. This is our car. If you have only one car for your whole life, wash it, take it in for maintenance, make it as good a car as you possibly can, upgrade the engine, do it, get a new paint job when it gets old, whatever you need to do, but, take care of it. It's a really important part, but there's also, a lot of other aspects that need to be cultivated, and too much focus on that is just going to lead to, dramatic imbalances. So I think you have it right on the money. You got to be able to derive your own self-worth, your own self-love that is far beyond the social media likes and how many, hearts or likes or whatever the other terms are for Snapchat, or I don't even know. But all of this social reinforcement, which is very aesthetic based, and then find those things that are really your medicine. Like, what's your medicine? What is that thing that for you brings the best out of you, and then, allows you to bring that in the world? Is it dance? Is it helping out with other people? Is it with animals? Is it with kids? Is it, find your medicine and then live in that, and then enjoy the hell out of the rest. We got a chance to walk around in these great bodies. Might as well make the most of it. Absolutely. But just keep that in balance with, the rest, your consciousness, your spirit, your mental health, everything, your achievements, what you're bringing to the world, all lumped together like your authentic medicine.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it comes down to having some sort of creative pursuit. You know what I mean? I think for a lot of people, that's having children. That's great. You know, giving you a sense of purpose, or like you're creating something. For me, it's certainly a business or a blog or whatever. You know, it doesn't need to be something you're making money off of, but it certainly needs to be an interest, or like you said, it could be volunteer work. It could be creating, you know, having a book club. It could be, you know, taking a class, learning a new skill or a new language. Like you need to have some sort of creative pursuit, a place where you
Yeah.
feel like you're deriving a sense of meaning and purpose. And I kind of hate throwing those words around because the average person is kind of like, it's just not, again, it's one of those words like mindfulness or like moderation. It's fine. We keep hearing it over and over again. It kind of doesn't have as much meaning. But you'll know what your sense of meaning is when you feel it inside, where you're just like, it feeds your soul. When you're doing it, you lose track of time. You're just in flow. And so having that outlet, all of a sudden you're like, yeah, and I want to look good. I want to feel good, but I also need to feel like I'm contributing in some way. And for me, a lot of the physique stuff and a lot of the aesthetics felt very shallow. Like, I mean, I remember getting like several magazine covers and like being super excited that day that I found out. And then it was like, what's next? You know what I mean? Just like, it was never enough. It was always a race to achievement. And then once you got there, there was a sense of relief. And then it was on to the next one. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it wasn't even like a deep sense of happiness or joy. It was more just relief, you know, which is kind of depressing.
Well, that can be with anything, you know, that can be with any kind of achievement. You know, you build so much towards it. If you're not in the present and allow yourself a moment to enjoy what's happening, and you're always living in the future, you know, it's going to be difficult to enjoy anything. And I think that's something that a lot of people, you know, if you look, I was looking at some blog posts from, you know, this palliative care nurse, so someone who's with people at the end of their life,
Well,
and looking through the regrets, like the top deathbed regrets, you know, a lot of them really came down from not speaking their mind and focusing too much on the future, always building things. Oh, if I get this thing, if I get this promotion, I just need to work a little bit more, and just always pushing it out in the future. You know, almost all of them, if they would have spoken their truth, you know, spoken and lived their truth and lived more in the present, you know, that would have cured almost all of the regrets that people have when they're dying, because you can always look to that next summit, because there is no actual summit. Everything is a false summit. It's just a climb. It's just an endless climb with only one destination, and that's, you know, the other side, the great mystery that where we're all headed. So, you know, to try and think like, if I just lose this weight, or I get this cover, I make this thing in the show, then I've got it. It's cool to have those goals, but just realize as soon as you get there, you'll be looking at the next summit. It's just human nature. So enjoying every step of that way, whether it's with your business, with your body, or whatever, that's the key to happiness.
yeah, for sure. You know, and one thing I get asked a lot at Jill Fit, especially, is, you know, Jill, I really want to do a competition, or, you know, I mean, these women who are at this more elite level of fitness, they go from someone who's kind of a casual recreational exerciser to someone who gets a taste of a little bit of an advanced fitness, or they do something a little bit more hardcore and they see their body change and it becomes addictive. And they come to me and say, Jill, you know, I really have wanted to do a show. It's been on my bucket list, but I read all your posts about how, and I actually wrote a couple for On It, about like just the kind of dark side of competing and how, you know, it can really mess you up mentally and all this stuff, and really kind of destroy your relationship with food. I don't want to, should I do one? I really feel like I probably shouldn't. And my advice is always that they should. And the reason why is because I'm a big believer that everyone deserves the full process. So I think they deserve the full spectrum of pain, discomfort, you know, happiness, success, like fallout, whatever that looks like, because there's so much to grow and so much to learn there. So it's just about, and the fact that they're even asking that question tells me that they're already going to be mindful. They're already going to be aware of some of those things that I wasn't aware of when I came for me. So I'm just a huge proponent that everyone deserves a full experience. So I say go for it, and then learn the hard way.
Yeah,
I mean, you and I could sit here all day and tell people, oh, don't do this, watch out for this. But like, until they actually go through it, I think it's important.
Yeah, that's the poet's way. It's our birthright to experience all those things. So I don't think we should try and shelter ourselves from everything. I think if you are going to do it, though, you know, I've been around people who've been preparing for that. And it's funny because they'll do things that they know don't make sense. You know, like you said, like eat the same food, you know, for like 25 meals in a row. You know, something that basically the asparagus is steamed to the point where it's lost all of its fiber and cellulose value. It's like mush. It's like baby food and tilapia, and they'll eat that. Like that'll be the plan from their, numbnut nutrition coach or bodybuilding expert, right? And then, I saw 2 people get diverticulitis from just
Wow.
pure lack of fiber in their diet as they're preparing. And it's like, yeah, of course, like you can't do that to your body. It doesn't even make sense, like why you would have to only have those 2 foods. It's just somebody being lazy. It's like it's not even accurate. Like, don't just have asparagus. Like that doesn't make any sense.
I know, it's one of those things that, I wish, and this is definitely one of the things that that I try to get across. Like, you have to be an independent thinker. Like, if you're getting a coach and he's basically telling you at 12 weeks out to do 2 hours of cardio, like, fire him. Like, question him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, have an intelligent thought in your mind, and like, it all comes down to, I believe, questioning stuff. Like, you have to, if a coach tells you to eat this exact same meal for like 6 weeks, that is not healthy. But I think, like we talked about earlier, a lot of people want someone to take the reins, you know what I mean? So it's kind of irresistible in that way. But, I think we have an epidemic of people like not really asking questions as much as they should be, especially around fitness stuff. I mean, this stuff to me and you seems at this point, of course, it's easy to talk about now, but I probably would have, when I was getting started, I would have eaten whatever because I was like, they know, I don't know.
Right.
And you have to learn. So yeah. And then unfortunately things like that happen. It sucks, but it's part of the process.
Yeah, you definitely learn. And then there's just doing it the right way, and taking a little ownership of learning just the basics. And that's what we try to push out on it too, is just give people enough information. Like, healthy fats are healthy for you. Fat doesn't equal fat, like Himalayan salt's a good, important source of nutrients. You don't need to cut it all out. It's not going to make you all bloated. Like very simple things that people have been like, salt, fat, all of these freakouts that have been perpetuated, and just helping people understand. And then you start to see dramatic results. I mean, it's always, I do some nutrition consultations where I'll sit down with people and some people in our academy. And we have one gentleman that's, over 400 pounds, and he's awesome guy, like one of my favorite guys, really gets after it in the gym. And I sat down with him, and he was still having trouble with weight loss. And I know that when they lay out what's going on, like a detective, you'll be able to start seeing some holes. At least I hope so. Because if they come out and there's nothing wrong, then I'm just scratching my head. I don't know what to do. But generally, it's just they've lived from these old paradigms where they're starving themselves of the adequate nutrients. They're not fueling their body enough to kick up the metabolism to do what it knows how to do, which is shed the weight that it doesn't need any longer because food is inadequate. There's an adequate amount of food, and the myths about fat and the myths that are preventing us from getting adequate mineralization and these things. And you start to correct that, and it's just awesome to see that weight start coming off, and the smiles coming fuller, and the hormones start coming back. And it's just cool to see that process from just making a few simple things. This is no magic diet pill. You don't need to take this or get this surgery or whatever. Just, use the tools that we've had in front of us the whole time. These great foods and these movement patterns that work with our body, and, you'll start to see dramatic results.
Yeah. And it comes back to the mindset piece. As you were talking, I was like, that's so interesting. And it's so true. And I wonder what some of the people who work with you, like, do they have some mental blocks to trying things like fats and salt and stuff like that? Because I find a lot of my women, fear is like the biggest obstacle. The way they're doing things is not working, but they won't try anything different. It's like they, like in the face of something that's actually not working, they won't try something different because familiar feels more comfortable than something that might actually work. So they'd rather do something that's not working, that's familiar, than do something. Like, humans are just so strange like that. So I think the fear and what I always say is, like, the old way will always be there, right? The old way of like going back to the tilapia and the asparagus, it's not going anywhere. The 2 hours of cardio a day, not going anywhere.
Well, it might also be fear that if it did work, then they have to accept the fact that it was their responsibility all along. Then all of these pieces that they've shrugged off and said, oh, it's not me. I got this thing going on and it's out of my control. I can't help it. And if they make a dietary change like that and it starts working, then they have to come to terms with the fact, like, oh shit, it was all mine. It was mine all to begin with. I was just making some wrong choices. And just, we all make mistakes. There's One of my favorite quotes is that from Heraclitus. It says, no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man. Like, we're always changing. Like, whatever, at any given point, we're different than the person before us. So forgive that person, love that person, and just make choices. Like, don't get so hung up on these things that you said and these things that you believe. You can just decide to change. Just use that force of your mind, that thing I call mental override, where you just decide, like, screw it, I'm in. Like, I'm going to learn something. I'm going to do something. Override all those fear and doubts. Just don't even think about it. I think sometimes we just think too much. We get paralyzed by our own thinking. Just do it. Just mental override. Just push the hammer down and just go.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting hearing you talk about it. I'm thinking, like, fear of success. To me, it's so interesting because once you do have, and you can probably speak to this as like a business owner too, once you have that success, you're on the hook more, right? Like, there's more to lose at that point. So someone who is 400 pounds, in a way, it's kind of easy to, like, just stay there, right? Like, it's the status quo is easy to maintain. And once you start losing, now all of a sudden, you don't want to go back to 400 pounds. And it's like this fear of, like, well, what if I gain it back? Or what if I'm not successful? What if I don't keep losing? It's so strange, but it all comes down to, like, our mental stories, what we tell ourselves about what's possible, just like you said. So it's almost getting over those fears. And then, is there some sort of fear of success that we're going to be on the hook more, or we're going to have to be more accountable, or there's going to be more responsibility? I mean, as your business grows, there's more people looking to you for whatever, So I think it's one of those things that's so interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I think really I'd really diagnosed fear of success because it didn't make any sense to me. And what I found is that the core of fear of success is really just fear of an even bigger failure when the stakes are even higher.
Absolutely.
It's just setting yourself up for a bigger fall. It's not that you're actually afraid of success. Success is awesome. Nobody's actually afraid of success. You have to be a crazy person. But what you're afraid of is that when you get to that point, if you fail, it's an even bigger failure. So it's just another way to mask this fear of failure, this fear of not being good enough, having that judge in our mind that's always whipping us with the lash. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough. And with that punishment, failure is really painful. So of course you're going to be afraid of things that are painful. That's the response that fear is designed to do. You're supposed to be afraid of things that are painful. But the only thing that's making this painful is your own inner judge, is the own part of yourself that loves yourself less when you fail. So if you get rid of that piece, then your fear goes away because the pain goes away. So if you take care and you tackle that inner judge and says, you know what, I'm going to love myself no matter what, 500 pounds, 1,000 pounds, I don't care. I'm going to love myself no matter what, or in the best shape. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to judge myself based on this criteria and hurt myself if I don't live up to it. I'm going to love myself no matter what, whether I'm sleeping on my mom's couch and writing and nobody cares, nobody even wants to read it. I'm going to love myself. And then the pain is gone, and then the fear is gone. And then when the fear is gone, then that's when the magic happens. Then you have free will, and then you can start making choices. And then that's when the awesome shit starts to happen.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It really reminds me of, it's almost like not only being not scared of failure, but almost like making failure the goal. Because in a sense, the more you kind of, you're way less scared of it. So I don't know if you have read the book, The Game by Neil Strauss. It's all about pickup artistry, right? So I actually just read it like a couple months ago. Just like totally just curious. And I read his newest book, The Truth, as well.
The boys are in trouble now. You read The Game.
I know. I'm like, I think some of these have happened to me before. No. So I read The Game, and it was so interesting to me. Of course, the stories were like kind of just crazy. But what I really loved about it was, it's this group of like nerdy guys who all want to learn how to approach women, but they're terrified. And so what it did was, in the game, it basically, the pickup artistry, like culture just turns it on its head. We can talk about if it's like, if it's good or bad or whatever, but turns that whole thing on its head and says, actually, the more women you approach, the more rejections you're probably going to get, but also you're going to win too. You're going to win more too. So like being rejected.
It's exposure therapy.
Exactly.
It's like the old veteran that's been in 1,000 battles is way less nervous than the rookie who's jittery on the front lines. And from, war stories and in the armies to, fights to sports to everything, like people understand that, like the more you get used to something, the more you'll be able to react appropriately. So getting that exposure to failure and realizing like, hey, I failed, and guess what? I'm all right.
I'm the same person. Like, yeah.
Things are gonna be fine. I think that's crucially important. So, and I think, as you said, the game is really a story about making yourself a better person, and maybe 10% about manipulative psychology to get laid. So there's definitely the dark side woven in there for sure. But really, it's just about getting in the game, period. I mean, almost everybody's just at the sidelines. It's like a middle school dance where everybody wants to dance. It's way more fun if you're all dancing, but everybody's sitting on the sidelines, like afraid to just get in the game because they're afraid of the judgment and all of that. And granted, middle schools can be savage, so maybe there is some warranted fear, but nonetheless, it's all going to be better if you just get in the game and know that even if you get rejected, don't take that judgment on yourself. Like if you go up to somebody and you get totally, completely rejected, it's cool. It's all right. Like
and I survived.
Yeah. Don't internalize that and make judgment. That's their story. That's fine. And then the more you get used to that, you're on your way.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me reminds me of like not taking your failures personally. Like obviously like talk about the form agreements, but don't take it personally. I think that people who are the most successful look at their failures or their missteps or their obstacles from a clinical perspective instead of from like a personal perspective. So do you like make that mean that you're bad? Does a failure make you feel that you're a failure, or is it just literally part of the process, and just being like, oh, now what's the, there's a book called Nothing to Lose by Ryan Blair, who is the founder of iStylus, but he says the path is all math. And I love that because it's basically like take out the subjective nature of a failure and just literally look at it clinically. And I'm sure as a business owner, you're kind of the same things. You're like, I have to get clear, because when you have that emotional and that self-judgment and it's all bad clouding your ability to make decisions, you're not able to make the right decision for the company or for the other people or whatever that looks like, or for yourself if it's body change or fitness related. So I don't know. I'm fascinated with this stuff. I don't know if it's like super boring to everybody listening, but to me, it's
I don't think so, because it's something that we all struggle with, even no matter how many times, you've told yourself that, it's still something that's challenging. It's still, you read a tweet that's attacking you unjustly for some reason, and you still get that initial well of anger, like, what? And then you're like, all right, relax, because you've been there, you've been there enough times and you understand where it's coming from. And, but the more it happens, the more you practice consciousness instead of allowing that emotional rocket ship to just take off and take control of you. The better you'll get. I remember, as we're talking about talking to girls, my dad always told me a story. One of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world was one of my dad's friends. And my dad was always very self-critical about himself. And he admired his friend because they were out one time. And I guess he went up to some extremely pretty girl, and the girl just brutally shot him down. I mean, like, just went over the top to make him seem like he was disgusting, and how dare he even talk to her or ask her to dance or ask her to buy a drink or whatever he ended up doing. And my dad was like, so like shocked. He's like, oh, he must be devastated. So then later on that night, he was like, oh man, that was pretty tough with that girl. And his friend, the hedge fund manager, just looked at him like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, when that girl, she's like, oh yeah, that thing. Like he had just completely, wasn't even a factor. Like he didn't even accept that. He didn't take that onto himself. He's like, oh, that's her story. That's not my story. That's just her story. So that's cool. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. Whereas that would like devastate somebody,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Put somebody into a hole who is, didn't have that internal belief and self-confidence. And I think we can get there with that mental override and just be like, that's their story. If someone's coming at us with something that, that we don't agree with, don't take it on. Don't make that part of your story. Just that's their stuff.
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of, I feel like, especially like the online space, is that there's room for everybody, right? So like there's a million different people blogging about fitness, but like one person's going to come in and there's like this perfect fit of message to client that it, with someone else it might be like this or like this. And there's just so much room for that perfect matching system. So same thing with like a supplement company or like, a fitness. I mean, you're always going to attract some people and you're just not going to be for everybody. And I think you get into trouble when you try to be for everybody. So but like you said, it's hard. Like you get that emotional hijack moment, you know what I mean? You're just like, wait, what? You want to defend yourself. And then you're just like, actually, no, like it's fine.
Yep. Yeah.
Totally
Just
fine.
send some love.
Yeah, for
Well, this
sure.
is awesome. I mean, I think we mentioned your site a bunch of times, but is there any other place that people can find you out on social or any other ways that they can keep in touch?
Yep, all the usual spots. It's just Jill Fit. So on all the social media platforms, Jill Fit, and then jillfit.com.
Beautiful. And also check out for your writing on the On It Academy. I know you've contributed, and we certainly appreciate that and look forward to reading more of your pieces. Absolutely. So that's pretty much it. I just, appreciate the alliance and, happy that you're doing the good work.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, mad love. And I will catch you again soon doing another podcast this week. Doubling up. Woot. Talk to you later. Peace.